Hi, this is Ashley. Welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the resources that I have been using to learn Slovak, or at least try to learn Slovak, because it's debatable how successful I am at the moment with learning the language. But the resources that I have at my disposal currently are actually helping quite a lot to help me feel confident with using the language and be a bit more comfortable with having conversations. Now, I do want to say that the method that I'm using to learn Slovak is based on comprehensible input. Okay, so with that, you need to make sure that you are hearing a lot of Slovak, you are reading if you can, and you're reading stuff that you can comprehend. Okay, you're always having conversations with people and you're hearing things that you can comprehend, which allows you then to take words that you don't know and sort of be able to guess the gist of them a bit easier. Okay, so I'm concentrating on input rather than output. The conversations that I have, people can talk to me, I can understand them. I may not be able to answer them in a very detailed way. The way I use the language is very basic at the moment. I can answer with like short sentences. I know that some of the words, I might not conjugate them well, but I know some of the words that I need to know. I know enough to have to reply to questions and that kind of thing, as long as they're not about complex topics like business things or like professional things in Slovak, which I'm still completely lost on. But when it comes to like everyday things, then I tend to be okay. All right. And by the way, I am still working through these resources as we speak. So by no means is this an exhaustive like review of any of these resources. I'm just letting you know the resources that have helped me on my journey toward learning Slovak, and they are still, as of now, still paying off for me. So the first resource I'd like to talk about is the first book I actually bought, which is this one. Sorry, I'll get the light out the way. Colloquial Slovak by James Naughton. Okay, this has gone through a few different revisions. I believe this is I think I have the second or third edition, something like that. And this book is very useful for the beginner because it doesn't just jump into Slovak. It kind of, a lot of the explanations in this book are in English. It's more heavy on English than it is on Slovak. And for those that need to know about the grammar and want to know about how to use the language well, this is brilliant. I find that my issues with it are that the dialogues are quite contrived. You can tell they were created to teach language and not to kind of explain cultural things, or sort of some of the things they present are not quite how they would be said or expressed by native Slovaks. However, that doesn't mean that this book isn't useful. It just means that some of the situations you might find in the book are not entirely perhaps applicable to situations that you might find yourself in daily life. Okay, but they are still useful for teaching the language, and it's mainly kind of the dialogues and things, the exercises. They are constructed for the purpose of helping you learn the language rather than really talk about the culture or anything like that. So with that said, it is a very good book. It starts very gently with very basic vocabulary. One of my main gripes about this book is that the exercises could be more plentiful. Okay, the exercises are kind of quite short, and there's only a few of them in the book per unit. Okay, so if you're looking for something with a lot of like exercises that you can do in a written form or with a conversation partner, this book is probably not going to be that helpful. What this book is very helpful for is having a grammar reference and being able to use it for listening, because I bought the book when CDs were still a thing. And so there were CDs inside, and nowadays they are probably going to be MP3s. But the good thing is there are a lot of MP3s. There's a lot of audio in this course, and it is very useful from a listening and a reading perspective, and as a grammar reference. So that's Colloquial Slovak. And I've been supplementing that with some other resources. So for example, I've found this site by this guy named Marek Hlavac, and he's got this whole website hosted on Google Sites where he takes you through various phrases and grammar points that a Slovak would know about, their language. But he has like a very good way of teaching the grammar and some of the cultural aspects as well. So where Colloquial Slovaks kind of falls down in the sort of teaching about the cultural aspect of the language and the, just understanding, the people and the culture. Marek Hlavac's site is a lot better. So it tells you about certain things you do when you greet people, for example, or certain things you would say in a certain way and not in another way, because that's how the natives would do it. Okay, so that is a very useful website for me, and there's like 22 or 23 different lessons, and each one gives you a number of useful phrases that you can use and you can drop into conversation. So as you learn more things in like other books, for example, you can supplement those things that you learn from books like Colloquial Slovak, or the other one that I'll get into in a minute, which is called Krížom, krážom. You can actually take these phrases from other sites and sort of use them as extra vocabulary, which is very, very helpful. Okay, so that's Marek Hlavac's website. Another website that I know of that I personally haven't used much is slovake.eu, and that has a whole course available for free. I can't say much about that because I don't personally use that, but I do know it exists, and I will probably be looking at it at some point. But I've got my hands full with the current resources that I have at my disposal, including getting a lot of conversation practice with my wife, which is very handy as well. So, because one of my main issues with learning Slovak is that I'm getting a lot of input, but the output side of things is a bit slow. Even though I can understand what I'm doing and sort of the words that I'm hearing, my ability to reply and to use those words that I know in conversation to produce those words is kind of falling behind my ability to comprehend the language at the moment. So if you're more of a kind of practical person that likes to jump in and have conversation practice rather than learning from books, then I would definitely recommend getting a conversation partner or some sort of pen pal or something, and maybe I can find some resources on that, but I don't know any resources for that other than finding a native Slovak that you can kind of practice with, like I can do with my wife. Okay, so other books. My wife bought Krížom, krážom for me, which I talked about a few minutes ago. Krížom, krážom looks like this, and this is A1. This is the beginning book in the series. And this presents things a lot more visually. There are lots of pictures, and vocabulary is presented in a nice, easy way. This book has plenty more exercises in it as well. So there's a lot of kind of tick box type exercises. In general, the layout is a lot less text heavy than Colloquial Slovak. but this is very much, I find the dialogues are a lot more useful to sort of everyday life, and the amount of vocabulary you learn is a lot. You learn a lot more vocabulary, I think, from Krížom than you do from Colloquial Slovak. Until, of course, you get to later in the Colloquial Slovak book when things kind of pick up a bit. But it kind of Colloquial Slovak starts out very basic, whereas Krížom sort of dumps you in the deep end and is like, okay, figure it out, because Krížom does not have any English in it at all. It is entirely written in Slovak, and you have to just dive in and get immersed in the language, and that is what I think is one of the best things you can do for your language learning. And that is partially, again, why I moved here, not just for practice in the language, because I love the language, I love the people, I love the culture, but learning a language when you're not in the country can be kind of hard. It's definitely, my Slovak has definitely picked up since I moved here, and even if you can only visit just to kind of get language practice, it will improve you a lot more if you're kind of a practical person that likes to communicate and just jump in and start speaking. In that respect, I think Krížom is going to be a better book for you, because it will teach you a lot more vocabulary, and it will do so in a way that makes you have to understand the language, because there's no way to relate that to English. There's no explanations in English in the book. You kind of have to learn by osmosis, right? You kind of learn by picking it up and seeing repeated words in the book. And I think for people who are just learning Slovak, personally, I appreciated the Colloquial Slovak way of doing things at the beginning of my journey, because I needed that kind of hand-holding. I needed that kind of grammar explanation. I'm a very theoretical kind of person, so explaining things in the way that Colloquial Slovak did was very helpful to me in my beginning stages, when I would have been completely lost with just having material in Slovak with no way of understanding it. Having said that, Krížom is great if you have some experience of the language already and you want to either review the basics or kind of take them further. Personally, I think the way that Krížom explains the grammar is more intuitive than Colloquial Slovak. A lot of the explanations can feel overly academic in Colloquial Slovak compared to Krížom. But either way, you're going to learn the grammar. It's just a case of whether you prefer to learn it in a more natural feeling way, which Krížom would do, versus a more explanatory academic kind of way, which Colloquial Slovak would do. Okay, so I've talked about Colloquial Slovak. I've talked about Krížom. I've talked about Marek Klaveč's site, and Slovakia.eu. Okay, let's talk about YouTube channels then. So there's a few YouTube channels that I have watched and continue to watch. One of them, which I find very, very useful, is a channel called Learn Slovak with Stories, and these are really easy to comprehend stories, and the lady who runs the channel speaks very slowly and very understandably. So if you want to jump in and try and understand Slovak as quickly and easily as possible, this is a brilliant channel to use for studying, because you can easily pick up vocabulary without having to kind of concentrate on learning words, because the whole kind of learning words, learning vocabulary in a very kind of traditional kind of academic way is good if you want to make sure that you're memorizing stuff, but it's not good in terms of just kind of naturally being able to pick up the language, because we don't usually learn things by just like drilling it over and over and over again. We would learn language better by just kind of jumping in, trying to understand things, and then trying to hear repeated words over time, and then over time you can get the gist of what is going on, and then eventually, through repeated exposure to that word, you come to understand what it means without having to go and study it, right? So that's the theory behind kind of comprehensible input. And I think in that respect, Learn Slovak with Stories is brilliant. Yeah, other than Learn Slovak with Stories, we have a channel called Learn Slovak with Ease and Joy. That's one that I recently picked up, and it's very good for conversation. It's very good for like understanding dialogues, because there's a lot of spoken dialogues, and there's a lot of grammar explanation there as well. And I think it's done in a slightly more natural way than Colloquial Slovak. So that, again, is another YouTube channel that I would definitely recommend. And then there's another channel as well called Linguate, I think. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly, but again, that is a very good channel for learning phrases, some grammar explanation. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend those YouTube channels to supplement your learning. They probably wouldn't be good enough to sort of learn the language from scratch unless you have a lot of time to browse a lot of YouTube videos, because the YouTube videos tend to be very kind of focused on single topics, whereas the books, Colloquial Slovak and Krížom, kind of tackle a little bit of different topics in each of their lessons. So if you want kind of focused access to one particular topic, so you can learn all the vocabulary about clothes, for example, or food, then I think the YouTube channels that I told you about would be more applicable for that kind of, focused vocabulary learning, whereas the books, Colloquial Slovak and Krížom, are going to be much better for just getting a general feel for the language and trying to learn as much about a lot of little things as possible. So that's kind of my opinions of both books. And if you do decide to get either one of those books or both, you won't be disappointed with either, because I am finding them very helpful myself, and I'm sure you will too. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and leave a like if you liked this mini review of these resources that I've been using, and leave a comment if you want to ask me any questions specifically about any book or any more of my process that I'm using to learn the language, or just how I'm navigating life maybe in Slovakia. I don't feel confident enough to kind of go out on my own and use the language yet, but I'm sure that with these resources I will be able to. So I'm sure there'll be more videos where I talk about Slovak and where I attempt to learn the language and improve at the language. So look out for future videos on that on this channel soon. And I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye.